Hello, this is Phil from the Mach 7 Radio Intercepts channel and www.ab9il.net. Today is Monday, May 25th, 2020. Instead of my usual upload content consisting of radio intercepts, I'm going to talk on camera for a few minutes about air safety. The reason is that on Friday there was a deadly fiery crash of an Airbus A320 in Karachi, Pakistan. Over the weekend, there's been discussion here on YouTube and in the news media and on internet forums about why that plane went down. Most people, including some professional pilots who should know better, are missing the core concept and idea of why that plane went down. It's been bugging me, so I'm going to talk about it a bit here in this video. To summarize what happened, Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303 was in a descent to land at Karachi. Instead of making a normal descent and approach, the crew came in too high, too fast, and still attempted to make a landing. They were too fast to get the gear extended. Flight data recorder info was not available yet, but I suspect that they did not have the wing slats and flaps extended, and they were far out of parameters for a normal stabilized approach. At any rate, they attempted to land. They touched the runway, scraping the left and right engine nacelles on the surface. They pushed in power, climbed out, and attempted to come back around and land, this time with the gear down, right? Unfortunately, the aircraft lost both engines because of the damage incurred during the first touchdown. The A320 is a terrible glider. It's just a bit better than a brick with aerodynamic surfaces that will allow the crew to steer to the scene of the accident. The crew did descend and turn toward the airport in an attempt to reach the end of the runway and land. Unfortunately, they crashed short of the airport boundary. There was a huge fire. Everyone on board the plane except for 2 people were killed. There were also fatalities among people who were unlucky enough to be on the ground and in the path of the descending aircraft. Over the weekend, what riled me the most was seeing professional pilots critical of the crew, saying that they didn't have sufficient stick and rudder skills, as though being a better person hand flying an airplane is going to get them out of a situation that they never should have gotten into in the first place. That's bullshit. This is a problem of leadership. This is a problem of crew resource management and threat error management. The leadership actually starts at the top of the airline and goes all the way through down to the bottom employee. It's also applicable in the cockpit, as the captain is expected to be the leader of the crew. He's expected to be competent. He's expected to understand technical factors, human factors, and he's supposed to be able to size up a situation, decide and do what's right. Not only that, the captain's expected to use his skills to motivate and empower his crew to do their parts and do the right thing and bring a successful, or at least the most positive outcome to a situation in flight. Crew resource management involves having the ability to assess a situation, collect information from other crew members and people outside of the plane, such as air traffic control, maintenance, whoever is out there with information and able to help, and certainly in the cockpit, where the 2 pilots flying and perhaps other crew members who happen to be there can help work together as a team and bring the most favorable outcome out of a situation. Threat error management is similar to crew resource management, but it's not exactly the same. It involves identifying hazards and threats and things that can cause harm. It involves finding mistakes, correcting mistakes, in managing and working through a situation. Again, to bring a favorable outcome instead of having an undesirable aircraft state occur. I love the language. UAS, undesirable aircraft state. All right. I shouldn't giggle about it. Just a matter of semantics. But to get back on the subject of the very bloody and deadly crash in Pakistan, there can be many reasons why the crew arrived in the area high and fast. It could be poor handling by ATC. It could be a failure of the crew to assess where they are and judge how steeply they need to descend, how to manage their energy in the descent. For one reason or another, they were in the approach area high and fast. There's also the issue, and I put this on the captain, who didn't lead when he needed to lead. The crew was getting rushed. They were pushing themselves to move on with that flight and get the plane down to the runway when they didn't have to. After all, it was not a normal descent. The crew, I'm sure, didn't do a proper briefing on the approach. They certainly didn't descend and slow down, respect the operating limiting speeds on things like flaps and landing gear. They didn't allow themselves space to make that happen. They didn't work with ATC to push back if they're being squeezed by the controller. After all, this is a leadership issue. The captain needs to make sure that the captain is in control of the pace of events, not air traffic control or anyone else. You slow down. You make sure things get done properly, that there's time to brief, there's time to assess what's going on, there's time to monitor, and you fly that plane on profile at the right altitude, at the right speed, and when you configure that plane safely. That doesn't mean drop the gear and flaps at the maximum speeds that they can be brought out. Good operating practice means you slow the airplane down well below the limits. And you bring out the flaps, the gear, you do the proper call-outs, you do the proper scan in the cockpit. You configure everything the way it's supposed to be, and you monitor and fly that plane and bring it down with margins in the safety. You're never on the edge, on the gnat's ass, where anything more bad happening is going to cause you to get hurt or killed. That crew pressed on. They pressed on through 1,000 feet. Most airlines require the crew to have that airplane at the proper speed and configuration and power setting. All kinds of parameters that go into the definition of stable approach. That went right out the window. That crew pressed on fast, not properly configured, hoping that they could fix it before they got down there. You can't fix it before you get down there. That's a deadly thought. That's a deadly misconception. Oh, things are wrong, but I can fix it later. No, you got to fix it before you start. At any rate, they made it all the way down to the runway. And then they touched the runway, not on the landing gear, but on the engine nacelles. To add to all of the bad judgment in pressing on when they shouldn't have been pressing on, they got all the way down and touched the runway. Did anyone think that the engines are being damaged by this contact with the runway? Maybe they didn't understand that they were already touching. Maybe. I don't know. It might have been safer to simply close the throttles, let the airplane slide on the engine nacelles and stop. Nobody dies. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, the crew flying that plane is in some deep shit. They harmed an aircraft and endangered the people. But if you walk away, you get yelled at, you get fired. Maybe you spend the rest of your career flipping burgers, but you're still alive, right? So they didn't do that. They pushed in power and climbed up and out. And then the bad things started to happen. One engine fails, and then the next engine fails. And now, instead of worrying about how they're going to get yelled at or fired, now they're worried about getting down and not getting killed, managing the descent. And in fact, for a 13,000 foot runway. Was it 13,000 or 11,000? I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but that's a long runway down there. Those guys descended and turned and tried to make the approach end of the runway. All right, that's fine. But if you don't have the ability to add power and bring the plane back up, perhaps it might be a good idea to aim a little bit farther down the runway so that you have runway under you when you finally get down to the surface. I don't know for sure how the speed worked out. That's just my thought. And if they were too slow, if they stalled it and then dropped into that neighborhood, well, hell, that's even worse. They went too far, too long. But it's beside the point. Stick and rudder skills are beside the point. Either on the touchdown, the go around, or the dead stick attempt to get in. They never should have gotten into that situation. It's bad judgment, bad leadership by the captain, and certainly an absence of crew resource management and threat error management that allowed them to get that far into the situation before realizing that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So that's my discussion. It's not about stick and rudder skills. It's about judgment, and it's about using those advanced principles that they should have been taught in their training from day one of learning to fly. Judgment, leadership. You don't necessarily learn crew resource management or threat error management when you're flying a solo in a single engine plane. But all of those people on that aircraft, those two pilots, they certainly had time in crew airplanes, and they should have been learning how to work together as a crew and apply these advanced concepts. And if they were pushed through the training by someone who simply wanted to fill squares on a training form, or get them through barely able to pass a check ride in the minimum time and cost to the company, it's all bullshit, and the airline was asking for that to happen. All right, that's my thought on that. That's my rant, and we'll see what happens in the investigation. Thank you for watching, and of course, if you thought this was interesting, click like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and come back. Perhaps in another day or so, I'll have some fresh radio intercepts to upload, and probably not another rant on air safety, not for a while at least. Bye.